Politics, cultural exchange, social life and ecological issues. These are only few areas where international organizations implement their projects. They cooperate with public and private partners, and preserving peace for future generation is their principal goal. How do they arrange their work? What role is given to Kazakhstani initiatives? You'll find more on this in Kazakhstan International Vectors. All that did not happen immediately, and women human rights defenders as well as international organizations played here a very important role.
UN Women is working throughout the world in very key areas to support women's empowerment and gender equality.
On this spring day, shelves of flower shops are bursting with tulips, roses and chrysanthemums, and the profitable flower sellers within 24 hours exceed their monthly income. The 8th of March is known in the world as the International Women's Day. However, few people know that little bit more than 100 years ago, this day thousands of women went to demonstration in New York, demanding to raise their salaries and reduce working hours. That event marked the beginning of global reforms. 2 years later, communist Clara Zetkin proposed to institute the 8th of March as the celebration of International Women's Day. The war with Pakistan, economic recession, India's first atomic bomb test and formation of new state of Bangladesh. Historians associate these and many other events with Indira Gandhi, an influential state figure who had twice served as the India's prime minister. This woman took an active part in the battle for independence of her native country. 2015 has been marked for Croatia with unique elections. For the first time, a woman has become the country's president. In her election campaign, Kolinda Grabar-Kitarovic paid a special attention to the combating against unemployment and improving of energy security. In the nearest 5 years of her presidency, she will have to help her country to get out of the protracted industrial and economic crisis. It is widely considered that women have no place in politics. Nevertheless, there is a long history of examples from different parts of the world when the will, strong character and education allowed women, called by many the weaker sex, to take powerful positions. Women gained freedoms not only in the issues of political participation. Many historically male-dominated jobs are now being mastered by the fair sex. The number of women in business, industry and public works is growing. The prerogatives are being changed. So what rights and freedoms are they still fighting for? About 50 million of women around the world annually get abortions, and it's hardly possible to calculate the number of women abandoning their children. Experts are sure that there are millions of them. This unofficial but frightening statistics makes the world community pay attention to the mother and child-related issues. Problems of mothers are being solved in this social house for a year already. There are about 20 institutions of this kind throughout the whole Kazakhstan. They accommodate more than 140 women who bring up their children. All they were about to terminate their pregnancy, says house director Aminat Jipueva. Our house is intended for young mothers who found themselves in trouble. This accommodation is called the Mother's Home. Along with free accommodation and food, it protects women's rights. Children here are also under the full care. Each institution of this type provides material assistance to mothers. We completely provide our children with diapers, medicines, food and clothes. The women accommodated by this institution are given 1 year to find a job and get back on their feet. They are given assistance in drawing necessary documents and even getting education. When some of women attend classes, the others take care of their children. After leaving our institution, they should acquire some profession. Because of that, now we closely cooperate with the employment center in order to give our mothers at least the basic education. In future, Aminat plans to expand her cooperation with various organizations, because making young mothers socially independent and well prepared to the life outside the walls of this temporary shelter. Social videos like this can be easily found on the internet because domestic violence had become a common thing long time ago and hence developed into the global problem. About 70% of women all over the world are subjected to violence. Sociologists think that the roots of this problem mostly lie in gender discrimination, and the imperative like this has become the reason for the creation of various organizations. One of them is UN Women. UN Women is a UN agency on gender equality and empowerment of women. The organization began its work in 2011 with the headquarters in New York.
The issue of domestic violence is one main topic where the projects work heavily to prevent domestic violence in the first place so that it's not occurring by improving people's understanding, both men and women, boys and girls, about what domestic violence is and working on reducing stereotypes and misunderstandings between the roles of men and women in society.
UN Women supports the opening of assistance centers and human rights institutions. Special attention is given to the issue of educational and employment discrimination. The following statistics speak for itself. According to the UN, 60% of girls in some Arab countries do not have the access to primary education. In South and West Asia, this figure is 57% and 54% in sub-Saharan African states.
So these are the main threads or themes that UN Women works across the globe. And in each country where it works, we develop individual programs that are specifically needed to the context of the individual countries. The main partners are first and foremost the governments of the country. So in Kazakhstan, we work very heavily with the government of Kazakhstan, including the Commission on Women in particular, because they primarily need to ensure that the legislation which has been adopted is implemented in an effective way.
As for gender equality and defending women's rights in general, the organization places high expectations on rising public awareness. Issuing booklets, leaflets on a regular basis give the opportunity to any person to know about the world practices of solving of such problems.
So very often what we do is provide translation of things into local languages that they can be used, or at least into UN languages, of which Russian is one of them. But also conveying information is very important through the education system, so that your schools should have an educational program which allows them to learn about gender equality and gender roles in society.
The world community became concerned about the women's rights defense as long as 70 years ago. At that time, UNIFEM, one of the first UN system agencies, had a pioneering role in that. The World War I affected more than 80% of the planet's population. Its consequences are calculated not only by financial losses, but also by human victims. The major part of male population died, and a lot of disabled were among the survived. Then women shouldered the burden of restoring collapsed economies. At the same time, in many countries, they neither had the right to participate in the political life of the society nor to vote. The question was rather more about the survival, and only after that about political and other rights. There were also social issues, such as the protection of mothers' and children's rights and education. These were the top issues for discussion. The same period of time was marked with the appearance of the first international organizations. All their attention was concentrated on prevention of such conflicts. However, major adjustments were made by the World War II. The UN system, which included the Development Fund for Women, UNIFEM, was established. Still, solving all the issues at a time was impossible, as some of states rejected to accept new rules. We cannot say that the results were the same everywhere, and even in developed European countries, political rights of women, such as the right to vote, participation and the right to be elected, appeared much later than similar men's rights. In 2010, UNIFEM handed down its position to a successor, the organization UN Women. Its representatives cooperate with governments of countries, assist in the drafting of gender legislations, and develop assistance programs. The organization is always aware of current events and renders necessary assistance to residents of different countries in proper time.
We also, of course, work very heavily with civil society organizations. Usually they're the implementing partners, meaning that we build their capacity and work with them together so that they actually work on the ground in the communities with the local people.
Goodwill ambassadors help the organization to be closer to each woman who needs help. Famous persons and stars of show business support its campaigns and participate in charity events. Last year, British actress Emma Watson joined one of its programs.
This is also being supported by a large global campaign which was started last year in UN Women called He for She. You may have seen the posters around and the logos. And this is an effort to engage in particular men and boys in the fight against domestic violence.
He for She is a major campaign of solidarity towards women, which is intended to attract boys, youngsters and men to the battle for equality and emancipation.
One of the main areas that UN Women works is in the area of political participation of women in decision-making, also supporting women's economic empowerment. UN Women is also working to support women in peace and security, and to support different countries to improve their national framework for the promotion of gender equality and women's empowerment.
Women in politics and their representation in government is what the organization stands up for, because the world experience demonstrates that the adoption of laws, especially concerning children, is hampered in those countries where the number of women in legislative authorities is less than 10%. Specialists propose to solve this problem by means of adoption of special quotas. Gender quotas mark the level of representation of women and men in government. The proportion of women in parliaments of Sweden, Finland, Iceland, Norway and Denmark varies from 30% to 57%. We know countries with a lot of women in legislative bodies, such as Parliament, for example. Among them are Norway, Spain, Holland and other European countries. It is because constitutions of these states have this rule. In some countries, the quota of female participants in political parties should be at least 40%. This March, as it was 100 years ago, the issues of women's rights will be discussed in New York, but this time no demonstrations are expected. At the special session of Commission on the Status of Women, the world leaders and representatives of international organizations will make the conclusions of their work and determine new challenges requiring an immediate response.
There will be a 2-week review of the 20-year implementation of the Beijing Platform for Action, which is a global review. There will be also participants from Kazakhstan there as well, both the government and civil society. So this will hopefully lead into improved action and advocacy for gender equality.
Apart from that, the entire world has to take stock of the Millennium Development Goals. Countries are expected to share their achievements and then develop new goals. Representatives of UN Women are confident that their subject area will be covered not just in one chapter, and the issues of gender equality will be a fundamental criterion in each step towards the sustainable future.
2015 is also a big year for the anniversary of the development of the UN Security Council Resolution 1325 on women, peace and security. This is also an anniversary this year, and there will also be dedicated discussions on the progress made and the progress still needed in the implementation of commitments, international commitments on women, peace and security.
The number of billionaires is growing from year to year. Meanwhile, representatives of the fair sex are more often included in the lists of the world's richest people. For instance, in 2014, Forbes named as much as 172 women who have a strong influence in politics, economy or mass media. Thus, a 50-year-old Christine Lagarde, the first business lady who headed the International Financial Organization, took an active part in the battle against the financial crisis. Another example is Virginia from Maddie, who was beginning her career as a system manager in a large production company. Currently, she occupies the post of director at this very company, and her name is often cited for business faculty students in universities all over the globe.